Hello, and welcome to the sixth episode of the Noroff Interactive Podcast. It's official now. My name is Thursday, and here with me is my co-host Marcus. And here today we have John Klima.
All
All right.
right, all right. So, John, we got some quick questions for you.
Yeah,
Start
sure.
off here, all right? Who are you? Where are you from? And what do you do?
Well, who I am is, I'm John Klima. and uh, I used to be famous,
Uh,
and,
uh,
uh, and I'm an artist. I've always just been an artist, but I've used every medium known to humans. And currently, I'm a, finally a full-time associate professor at Noroff University College. Very happy to be here in Norway, even
mm,
though I miss my life and my off-grid farm in Portugal.
all right.
How's that? I do stuff. I
Farm in
make things
Portugal.
with my fingers.
Dude, that's. I feel like we haven't heard about the farm yet. That's
Oh, really? Oh, well, you got to check out my YouTube channel. But yeah, so we know about the farm. Um, uh, you know, me and my wife, we decided that we wanted to have something outside of Lisbon, where we normally live, where it's actually 30 degrees now. I'm so cold here in Norway. Uh, and so we bought a rustic property that just had a well on it, nothing else, and moved in. I started under a plastic sheet, and then we upgraded to a tent, and then slowly built, then a caravan, and we slowly are building this off-grid place, solar panels, and well water and rainwater collection and storage. And so we're growing tomatoes and then I do experiments.
right.
Build wind turbines out of garbage. So the whole that's the other point. The whole thing is basically built out of junk that we pull off the street. So, but that's the thing. Go to my YouTube channel.
Dude, we gotta link
so,
that.
Yeah, link it. I'll send you a link later at the end, and then you can put it in underneath. Don't forget to
so,
like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe
don't
here too.
forget.
That's
Uh,
it.
so, John,
Yeah.
being a U.S. citizen, what kind of culture shock? It must be like a change to come all over to Europe, especially
Yeah.
Scandinavia, which is like really cold climate, weird
Yeah.
people,
That's a really
and
good
like
question.
Vikings and all that.
Vikings.
Well,
Well, I love Vikings. I've always loved Vikings.
what kind
Uh,
of like culture
there's actually
shocks?
three culture shocks that we have to talk about, right? There's the
Yeah.
culture shock of coming from New York City to Lisbon, Portugal, and then the culture shock of coming from Portugal to Norway. Um, so the bigger culture shock was going to Portugal because I just all the food was so strange. It just wasn't the food that I was used to. And then to reference Norway, kind of cuisine here in Norway is kind of more what I'm used to. My mother was Swiss, and my father was Czech, and so we're kind of more in this area than down south, the Mediterranean. Really the only culture shock coming to Norway is I can't buy beer on Sunday. And the restaurants are really expensive. And so if you run out of beer on Sunday, you go to a really expensive restaurant. That's great. So, culture shock. And of course the temperature. But everything else is sort of, the same.
Yeah, yeah.
Coming from
Um,
Portugal where it's 30 degrees right now, and then, I wake up in the morning and it's 2 here.
Yeah, especially now. Like the winter came really early right now.
It seems like it, right? It feels like winter in October.
yeah, it's snowing here in Iceland, by the way, just for your
Oh, it is.
info. Yeah, Christmas came early. So where have you lived? Like, have you only been Portugal, US, and Norway, or have you been like to Asia or anywhere else?
I've never lived, but I've been all over the world. I've been to Korea, Japan, uh, Moscow, uh, but I've never lived in Marseille. I was sort of living in Marseille for a couple of months in France, and but really the story is upstate New York, born and raised upstate New York, went to school in New York City, and then after a couple of years there, I just went on a whim. I moved to New Orleans, Louisiana, so that's a completely different culture. And then from Louisiana up to Chicago, Illinois, and then from Chicago to Seattle, and then Seattle back to New York, and then New York to Portugal to Lisbon, and now Lisbon to Norway, to Christian time. So that's the whole story.
That's a lot of
Um,
places. I mean, it's so different. Like they're all far away from each other. It's not like around the block, you know.
Yeah, indeed. Well, you become when you become a used to be famous artist, you have tended to travel a lot on other people's dimes. You know, oh, we're going to do a show in Tokyo. Great, let's go. They're buying, right? They're paying for everything. Yeah, they're paying for everything. And how much am I going to get? Oh, $20. Well, okay, it's a trip to Japan.
uh, but let's move over to like what this episode is about, like talking to you and introducing yourself and all that. But the student that are listening and up and coming students, I think they want to know what courses you teach in different years and what you can actually teach them.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's a very good question. And it's also always a challenge to me because I never know who's walking through the door and what kind of prior experience they have. But I'm basically responsible for systems design. So, you know, we have Joshua and Eric and Felipe and Diego and Alexander. I think I've named everyone. Oh, there's two Erics. Desmond. So they all have their specialties, and I'm really into how do you actually make a game work, right? I'm not talking about modeling and texturing and particle effects, well, a little bit in particle effects, but what is a game system? How do you balance a game? How do you actually create a game design document and a technical design document that actually shows you what you need to do to make this game that you have actually come to life, rather than just, you know, having some little things around that animate. You know, how do you make a game? So technically, you know, with your fingers, that's how you make a game, and your brain. So that's what I do. Systems design.
Yeah. And what courses are you teaching? When
Oh,
will the
right
student
now,
meet?
this semester, I'm doing game methods 2, game methods 3, technical direction, and was there another one? Oh, and I guess lecture in PBL first year, so that's like intro to me for the first year students. This is what I'm about. Industry studies. Industry studies. I think that's what I'm doing.
We got that coming up.
Yeah. So, you know, all my classes are kind of a progression in technical difficulty, you know, in depth. So G2 is let's just figure out how to open and close doors, and with a key. How do you do that? And then by the end, we're getting into sound design.
How did you land on being a teacher in Scandinavia, or find yourself in Norway?
Well,
Like, did somebody contact you, or?
question. I was working for in the industry. I was working for a game company called Biodroid, and for about 6 years. And they ran out of money, basically. Looking for a job. And it's funny, it's through my wife. My wife was at a conference in, I can't remember where, but or someplace, and she met this guy, Steely Punish, who is a professor here also. And he said to her to tell me to send him my CD. So that's why I'm here.
All right.
Have you taught anywhere else before, or do you have any teaching experiences?
Tons of it. So let's see. City University of New York, NYU, Brooklyn Polytechnic University, which is NYU, Rhode Island School of Design, and there might be one more that I'm forgetting.
So you like teaching? That's
Oh,
the
yeah. I mean, okay, I'm now 60, almost 60 years old, and I worked in the industry, and now it's time for you guys to work in the industry. I'm just gonna, I want to grow my tomatoes and teach you how to make games. I have no more inspirations in life.
yeah.
So I love it. I absolutely love it.
So you have done the like game industry standard, like all of that thing, and you want to now teach up and coming game
Impart my
designers.
knowledge, my years of experience, my wealth of wisdom.
Yeah.
Of course you did me.
I mean,
Seriously.
speaking of,
I'm a Paul. Don't do what I do. Whatever you do, don't do what I did. But I'll tell you what I did. Yeah. Yeah, so I've been bouncing around three worlds, essentially. You know, the fine art world, you know, the museum gallery world, and the game industry, and education and academia. And I've used all three of these to help me advance in all three. You know, each one gives credibility to the next, and so I've always kind of just sort of, you know, weave these things together. Because I had some actual game credit, industry credit, I was able to have a lot of status in what was called the new media art world, which was just coming up at the very beginning of the web. You know, the very beginning. And so I had credibility, and so I could, and also skills already, right? I really also had graphic skills, and so, you know, I kind of was able to use that to get high up in the art world, and then that put me in academia, and then academia put me back into the industry at a higher level. So my last industry job was senior programmer. And yeah, I hated it. Hated every minute of it. Well, no, I loved it, but at the end, I was just like, I don't want to be senior programmer anymore.
I mean,
Too
what
much.
kind of changes are in senior programming that in comparison to like a normal starting job for a programmer?
Well, a senior programmer, you don't get to write very much code. You spend most of your time looking at the junior's code, and so that you might have one little pet project on the side. Usually, the senior programmer is responsible for the camera, for example. Yeah, because that's everything, right? And but I found myself, you know, doing too much management and not enough, you know, programming.
Coding.
Hands-on.
You know, not, I'm an artist, right? I got to make things.
Mm.
Viewing
And why is
code
that?
meetings, it just wasn't interesting to me. Okay, I can do it, but then I also have this problem with it. If somebody, you know, kind of screws up and didn't listen to me, I get angry. Not in class, not in a school environment, but in a professional environment. You know, it's like, you call that rope? A ball on a stick, not rope. I want rope. And so, you know, also just emotionally, I realized, oh, I'm not suited for this job. No way. Because I had to fire people, and that's no fun at all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How was that
but-
experience?
I'm sorry, say again.
How was that experience, like managing and all that, and especially the hardest bits like firing people?
Yeah.
Like,
And what's the question? It sucks.
like how was that
Fire-
experience? Is that just you just live with it, firing
Yeah.
people? You
Yeah. You know, I don't have any regrets, and anybody who I fired, of course, I actually still give a fine, you know, reference letter to. I only had to fire two guys, but that was to make me say I don't want this job, because, you know, people were up for review, and you know, the budget was getting smaller, and management told me I had to pick two people and cut their heads off.
why? What you mentioned? You mentioned about senior programmers. They do
Yeah.
not much of the coding, right?
Yeah.
Why is that? Is it just managing and like taking care of a group of juniors and mid-level programmers?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. It's taking care of a bunch of juniors and mids. And again, it depends on the size of the company. So a really, really big company like, Funcom or something like that, the senior programmer is actually programming because there's somebody above him who is, technical director or something. But in my company, we had a number of artists, 7 programmers, and so there wasn't anybody really above me except, right there, the senior management. So on a technical level, I was responsible for my guys, and there was nobody else to do all the sort of management work.
Yeah.
That is required. Source code management. Oh shoot, we got to roll back. Oh man, something got screwed up in our code base is borked again. So unfortunately, that was also part of my job.
I mean, this is like later on, but like at the very start. I mean, you're an old punk rocker, but where did the whole thing start? What happened right out of school? Where did
Right
you?
out of undergrad. So I just graduated from. Well, I went to let's start just a little bit earlier than that. I went to art school, painting, drawing, and sculpture. I studied photography, which was a new media, because it was a conservatory, right? It was like pretty much a conservatory school, painting, drawing, sculpture, and photography. And I ended up focusing on that, but I played around with everything, of course. And then so after school, I landed in New York City, and you have to work your ass off to pay for a shitty apartment in a very fashionable neighborhood in Brooklyn at that time. So what was that? Was it 1987? I think 1987. What was the question again? So where do I go
What
from
was
there?
the start of your career like? Like, how did you start?
Oh yeah, okay. Well, I did an internship when I was still in college with an art gallery, a photography gallery, a very well-known one called Daniel Wolf. And then so out of school, I went around with my portfolio, and a gallery was actually interested in my work and also needed a gallery assistant. And so I already had that cred from working at Daniel Wolf that they hired me. And so what was it, making $300 a week, so maybe $250 a week. It's nothing in New York City. That gets you on the subway. And then so I got like sort of a more high level gallery job where I was really in the middle of the fancy art world, and I absolutely hated it. I ran away screaming. So I started working in a photo lab essentially, and then I worked for a portrait photographer who did headshots for actors and actresses. I worked in his darkroom. So I was doing photography basically, and then what happened? And then I got sick of it, of living in New York City and having always just scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of my finances. So I said, I'm going to do something crazy. I'm going to move to New Orleans. So I did, and I lived there for a couple of years, and I was continuing to do photography, and then. But I hooked up with this guy, Thomas Mann, who is a jewelry maker, actually. He has this kind of brand called Techno Romantic. And I just became his, I had, shop skills. I could run a table saw, I can weld, I can solder, I can do lots of hand stuff, and I still do. Just get away from the damn keyboard. And so I became his shop manager for building display cases for his jewelry, jewelry boxes. And so I developed further developed my craft skills there. And then, I met a girl. There's always a girl involved. And she wanted to go to the Art Institute of Chicago. And so I said, yeah, I'll move to Chicago, give it a try. I'll even apply to the art school. I didn't get in. Okay, whatever. I didn't take it very seriously. I was like, yeah, here's some slides. And, here's me. I'm actually busy doing other things. and so she got in art history. So we moved up to Chicago. And then, so a colleague of Thomas Mann is a gentleman by the name of Lee Weitzman, who is a furniture maker, a very fine furniture maker. So I said, hey, man, Thomas says I should talk to you. I'm here at the job, and we talked. He didn't actually give me the job yet, but I just showed up the next day. He said, okay, I'm ready to work. And I don't think he remembered that he didn't hire me. So he just put me to work. The easiest thing to do was just say, okay, let's get this guy doing something, even though he never officially hired me. So that's how you get a job. You just go and start working.
You be the person
Forget
they
about
want.
the paperwork. And then so I was doing that. I was making furniture, making furniture, and then I decided, yeah, I can do this on my own. So I set up my own shop and my own sort of line of furniture, very funky stuff. And then, computers came around again. I was working with computers when I was 12, 14, TRS-80, 4K RAM. But then they came back and, oh, wow, you could design on these things, run CAD. So I started to do CAD programs and then playing games. And then I said, okay, I'm kind of more interested in the computer than I am in making furniture. So I'm going to teach myself how to be useful on the computer. And then what happened was, so I'm doing stuff with the computer. What happened is I met another girl, and she wanted to move to Chicago. I said, oh, let's go to Chicago. Oh, no, wait. No, let's go to Seattle. And I said, yeah, my friend Pizer and my friend Chris Ballou, old college buddies from bands. And I said, yeah, let's move to Seattle. And I bought for $800 a 1970 Mercedes-Benz Diesel 220, the nicest car I've ever driven in my life. It was already the crap, but man, oh, just so comfortable. Every 200 kilometers, I had to dump 5 liters of oil into the engine. But we got to Seattle, and then, therefore I'm now in Seattle. I set up another wood shop, but I'm still designing furniture, trying to learn 3D graphics. And then this application came out called PackSet. It was a database app. And it was $99. So back then, software, $99 software was super cheap, and Microsoft. And so I taught myself structured query language, SQL. And the amazing thing was that I was in Seattle, and this was a new Microsoft product. And at that time, it was a local telephone call for tech support. And so I basically learned how to use this software over the telephone. And I actually, but I actually discovered some bugs because it was a new software. I actually discovered some bugs and did bug reporting. And so there, I have the skill, and then I started, I started to get. I don't want to run a shop anymore. I want to have, have my little hobby on the side, but I don't want to run a wood shop anymore. So I'm going to try to get a job. So I look at the newspaper, and here's a job at this engineering company to work with databases. They fired me after 2 weeks. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I truly didn't. But I did learn a few things with this guy, Stan Wazinski, who's a subcontractor for Microsoft. He was interested in a couple of things that I actually taught myself how to do, which were a little unusual, special features of the software. And so he hired me, and he didn't fire me. And we built this thing called Presentation Builder for Microsoft that was actually demoed for internal use. It was actually demoed by Bill Gates himself, and we all got a thank you email. And so what it was a plugin for PowerPoint, where you could use a database to compile a slide presentation for specific audience criteria. Who are the people that you're going to talk to? So you would enter this kind of data, and it would pull down from the massive amount of official Microsoft PowerPoint slides and put together a presentation. Yeah. And then my friend Dale Pizer, who worked for his father at Pizer, had been and for a long time been writing a piece of software that models water flow through municipal sewer systems and drainage systems. And they said, "Hey, John, why don't you work for us? You seem to have some chops." And yeah, I'll work with my best friend. Yeah, sure, sounds great. And so I quit that job and worked for Pfizer, doing kind of sort of more heavy science engineering applications. But then, so I was working there for a while. But then I went back to visit my folks for Christmas in New York, and I just all my New York friends were there. I said, "I'm moving." So I opened up the newspaper, and here's a job at Turner Broadcasting soon. I take the role. I go and have an interview. I get that job, and then I'm out of here. I took a train with just as many suitcases as I could pile in, and I took a train across the country to New York. That was a wonderful trip, actually. And yeah, so I set myself up there, working for Turner Broadcasting. Then I got a better job. I had done it in Bradstreet, which was doing telephony systems. So, switching systems for telephones, the old school kind where you press star to talk to the operator. You one if you want English, two if you want French. It's one of these kinds of systems. So I got into the hardware very deeply as well. But it was a 20-hour-a-week job, which was paying me crap loads of money because of the Y2K crisis. So this was like 1999. So everybody was afraid that all the databases were going to crash. And so you didn't have to have a heavy degree or really much experience at all to get a super high-paying job doing Y2K compliance. And so I rewrote their telephony system from their old system to a new one. And it was 20 hours a week, and I had a lot of free time on my hands. So, and hugely well paid. And so I started making art again. And so from there, it became obvious that the art I should make should be on the machine, right at the time when people started to pay attention to art on the machine and trying to call it fine art, really get it into that high-end gallery world. And then everybody explained from there, okay, academia, art, industry, heavy art. And so, so eventually I'm in Portugal, just fast forward a little bit, working for Biodroid. Biodroid goes out of business, and I decide, okay, I'm done with the industry, and I'm perfectly happy to come to Norway and teach.
It's like
and build a model.
It's like a roundup summary of a story.
Yeah, that's the full biography. I usually don't go quite that into such detail.
I mean,
So
you've been working so many weird jobs, like in between this learning at the start.
I said sorry again. I spoke over you.
No, I was just saying that you've been learning so many different things over the course of like learning software at the start, and had this like weird little sub job journey going here to there.
Yeah, I recommend it to everyone. Here I am, worked out for me. But also, I guess I am a cautionary tale because I've lived long periods where I'm really scraping coins together to try to keep my independence and do things that I feel that are good for the world. And so I've never worked on a first-person shooter, and I never will. And so, yeah.
What you have worked on is a game called V-Side, or the Music Lounge.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, that was an interesting experience. I was working remote, so that was I was a consultant, and I was hired to do procedural animations, by code, real-time procedural animations and manipulations of these, your avatars, people. And the setting was kind of a virtual nightclub world. And so music, they had connections to the music industry so that they were, streaming music in these various rooms, and the kids could dance to them, virtually, and, and chat. It was really actually a lot of fun. I played the game as well. I was a moderator because you got superpowers, right? And so it was really just fun to like, oh, hey, I know how we can actually all teleport to here. which you can't get to anymore. And it's like, because you just click on them and you say, let's go. And that was part of the fun. We're talking about teenagers, young teenagers, mostly girls, but there were boys too, plenty of boys. And we were there as moderators to prevent predators, of course. We knew how to recognize them. And so at any rate, the job was to make procedural animations. And a couple of years, I think I was there for 2 years, and I would do stuff. I learned a lot about, client server, network, multi-user, massively multi-user, the issues of that. Holy cow. You can't imagine what kind of crazy technology goes behind World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
And you can't imagine. So I was making these modifications, these user interfaces where people could modify joint rotations and put throw in some sine waves, and then the peak of it was they wanted to have kissing in the game, and so I did this kissing algorithm, and the challenge was, what if a really tall person wants to kiss a really small person? Because you could change all your avatar sizes and stuff. You get this to happen. And so I was working with IK, but the necks kept on stretching out in weird ways. And so I went with a forward kinematic error correction routine where it was just constantly asking, am I getting closer? Am I getting closer? Am I getting closer? But just actually manipulating the animation rotation directly and blending them. And so I could get them to come together. And because it was an error correction approach, once they came together, they would oscillate, right? Because they're always trying to, am I close enough? No, go the other way. I'm like, well, where am I now? So there was this window where they were never actually on the spot. So they would oscillate. And it never made it into game. It was too sexy. It was too damn real. So the only thing that ever got into the game that I did, because of all kinds of issues with all kinds of issues, was Halloween head spin. On Halloween day, you could spin your head. And then, they let me go. I got fired. And I got fired because none of the things that I was doing could actually ever be implemented within the confines of their system, both technically and economically, and I don't know what you would call it.
But this was back in, when did you start working on V-Side?
Oh, I think it was maybe 2004 to 5. So I was still working on V-Side in 2007 when I first came to Portugal. So I was still working on V-Side, but I think right after that, shortly after 2007, that's when they let me go, and that's when I started working for Biodroid. I think. Makes about sense. 2007 is the landmark year in my life. I'll never forget 2007. It's when I moved to Portugal.
So you have had some ups and downs during your career, definitely,
Oh, yeah.
and you gave us your whole like life in that, like a really short story about what job you tried out and all that. Could you mentioned numerous times that you are an artist and a musician. How do you use those skills in your work? Because you're apparently doing like both. You're on the technical side and you're an artist as well, which is kind of interesting when it comes to coding, and like you are also playing around with playing music, of course.
Yeah. Well, it's a simple answer to that. I truly believe that writing code is an art. It's not an art. It's not an art craft. It's an art with an A. You can code in an extremely artistic way, at a conceptual level. So some of the systems I write are kind of crazy because they are actually stemming from some sort of artistic concept, rather than some formal. This is how you do things. Industry standard way. So that's the art part. The music part is, well, I'm also very interested in audio engineering and creating interfaces that involve audio in a complex way, including using the microphone for pitch detection as a replacement for the gamepad joystick WASD keys. So it's actually, you navigate via sound. Fast Fourier transform. And so that's the music side. And in terms of music, well, I haven't played in a while because all of my bands have sort of fizzled out because of COVID. But I'm building a model railroad. I invented a clock. So that the classic art idea, painting, drawing, and sculpture, I still do every day.
Yeah. Have you played one game called Phasmophobia?
No, never. I haven't
There's
played games in a long time.
yeah, there's this game called Phasmophobia that they use. Actually, you mentioned their pitch, and in that game, the monster is a ghost hunting game, right? You're a detective and you're trying to locate what kind of ghost is in haunting the building, and they use like your microphones to the AI detects your pitch and locates where you are. So when the hunt or the ghost starts hunting you, you need to be really quiet, else it will find you. So when you're hiding, you need to be really careful. And they also use like radio and walkie-talkies and all that to contact your partners and fellow ghost hunters. And it's really interesting how they use sound as a game mechanic and a feature, and it shows the power of that like primitive senses of ours.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what got me interested in trying it out in the first place. Several years ago, it was a little difficult. You had to actually write an SFT. Now, with Unity, it comes with it. So it's so easy in Unity, and I'm sure Unreal has something similar, to actually just get the microphone and do something with it. And, and then we can get into the ideas of other haptic interfaces. We have this standard gamepad, we have the WASDs, but there are other input devices. Well, Guitar Hero, of course, is an example of an alternate input device. But it's really easy for someone today, with Unity and with an Arduino. There's this one Arduino that I really love. It's actually configured like a gamepad. USB, plug it in, it immediately appears, and you can use it as if it was a gamepad. But then you got all these, right, that you can plug other stuff into and create another form of input device without ever having to do anything in your software, as long as you're just mapping it to the gamepad in some way or another.
Do you feel?
So this is. Why is there not more going on in that realm?
Do you feel?
Yeah.
Do you feel that audio side, the mechanics related to audio and microphones, maybe instruments playing in the background or something like that, do you feel like that is an underused game mechanic, maybe?
Yeah, I think it is. But actually having the idea of doing something like that is underdeveloped. The actual reality of doing it, I did one of my early tests with this was Portuguese Guitar Hero. So I had a Portuguese guitar, and if I pressed G or go forward, or not press, if I played F, I would go backward. So based on the musical note, I could navigate. But there's this problem of harmonics. It's not like a gamepad, right? It's a different, wholly different feel. It's not as versatile, but it's not as direct and immediate as an actual input device, right? So it was really difficult to navigate with. But I didn't care. That wasn't the point, because I had no monsters to kill. The idea was you drive around. While you're driving around, you're actually dropping little musical breadcrumbs that then play spatialized. And then if you come around again, you've heard sort of what you played, and that was that. And so it didn't really matter where you went, as long as you had some control. But it was still fun to play because, okay, I want to hear that. again? How do I get there? How can the guitar get there? And all the while, you're actually changing the sound because you're dropping these little audio breadcrumbs as you're moving along. So yeah, that was that. Again, I'm surprised there are not more sophisticated guitar education softwares. I've seen some. I haven't looked terribly deep, but man, that seems like a great use for this kind of idea. And you wouldn't have a microphone; you would jack it into your car through one of these little devices that you can interface with your guitar, and iPhones and things like that. Yeah, I mean, I thought I don't pay that much attention to this stuff, but I would have expected just because of all this AI that they know everything about me, that I would be informed of these products.
I mean,
and I haven't been, so I reckon they don't exist.
I mean, you really like this like other unconventional way of using controllers and interacting with games, which takes me to a project that I read that you had been working on called Fish back in 2001.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting because could you explain like the premise of that?
Yeah, basic premise was you played a game, third person, you're a fish. The goal of the game was to get to the other side of the tank. It cost 25 cents to play. I installed it in an old arcade cabinet. And so if you got to the other side of the fish tank and survived, an actual live goldfish would be flushed from a tank into unsaved tank. If you lost the game and you got eaten by the enemy fish, which was an Oscar, it's called an Oscar, the fish would get flushed into a tank with an Oscar and would be quickly devoured. So the idea was to put some money on the line and an actual life at stake in a video game. And this sort of came out of, I think, the Columbine, the shooting, one of the first big high school shoot 'em ups in the United States happened around then, and everybody blamed video games. And yeah, sure, absolutely. I think of Doom, and it's just like high school corridor. Repeating texture, repeat. Lockers, texture, repeat. Low ceilings, and a lot of aggression. Hell yeah, I blame it on video games. And here's one for you. I've had checks in place, of course. You could only lose 5 times a day. I had 3 Oscars, so 5 fish for 3 Oscars. Maybe it's a little bit overfeeding, but not so much. So you could only lose 5 times a day. But you also had the choice to play in passive or aggressive mode. So if you played in aggressive mode and there was no more than 5 losses a day, then you would actually risk the life of a goldfish. Otherwise, if you played in passive mode, you automatically saved the fish. An interesting experience was there was maybe a 13, 14-year-old girl who came every day to the gallery when it was displayed with a quarter, blink, and played in aggressive mode and won every time.
And that's quite interesting, though, to like put consequences.
Yeah,
in
real world consequences.
right?
But it was ethically balanced because they had to eat. The Oscars needed food too. You look at a package of goldfish food, and what is the main ingredient? Fish.
Mm-hmm.
And
you
so,
were
that's it. Sorry, that's it. We did have a lot of complaints from PETA. People, I don't know, one of the animal advocate groups. And so I exchanged a lot of mail with them, and in the end, I convinced them that okay, it's ethical, but it's not moral. So because they finally took offense. The last final offense that they could take against it was that it's gladiatorial combat. Good point. It's life and death for the sake of amusement.
It's although quite interesting you're bridging the gap between like the virtual world because it displayed a gamified fish trying to get at the end of the tank, right? And if you fail, it has consequences. So uh, this is quite was it quite new at the time, you bridging the gap between the real world and the
Yeah.
virtual?
I won't say I'm the first to do it, but I'm among the first.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about robotics and scientific stuff, that's the same thing. But that's in the realm of scientific research. But certainly in the realm of artistic exploration, very early. It's not the first. I'm sure you
Yeah.
can find examples, probably even from the 1970s. So I won't make that claim. But with the new media wave, new wave media, yeah, certainly, or very early, if not.
Yeah.
So I didn't get the idea from somebody else. Is what I'm saying. I'm going to do this, right? I think this would be interesting. The technology is there, so I'm going to give it a try.
I mean,
Yeah.
what did you learn from this experience working with real consequences?
Well, real consequences. Well, it depends. Well, okay, the fish was the fish. I'll never show that piece again. Yeah, yeah, it was really crazy, and so that's really the real world consequence. I've done other installations that are based on real world events, war in Kosovo, war in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've done visualizations and in installations around data sets that I collect from that, uh, from news reports essentially, and try to figure out where the planes went. uh, and yeah, and then this project I'm working on now, Truth Detectives, which is kind of a training game for people who want to do cyber sleuthing. So there was this bombing in Syria, and who's responsible? And the media says this, and the state-run media says this. Let's go to social media, and let's go to every tool that we have on the internet and try to figure out what actually is. So it's a game around that. Here's a consequence that becomes a game rather than a game having a consequence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, I think that more or less answers the question.
Yeah.
What you like you're talking about worked a lot about projects that take real life into the virtual world in some sense, like you mentioned with Iraq and bombing and like wars and all that. What has driven you to be so interested in working with these sectors or creating projects around this topic of bringing together, like I mentioned, the bridge between virtual and like real life?
Yeah, well, I'm an old war gamer. I'm a Dungeons and Dragons player.
Mm-hmm.
I've done minifigs, and I was really into that stuff. And so, and I love war. I love the history of war, the stupidity. I don't like war itself. I hate war, but I do love to read about it.
Yeah.
What a stupid thing to do.
Yeah.
And why enter a World War One? So
Yeah.
human stupidity. So I love to read about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I love minifigs. And so it just makes sense to how it goes this way. I mean, it's gaming.
Mm-hmm.
We have strategy games, the Total War series, fantastic. Sort of minifig, virtual minifig game, and specifically with the sort of data mapping that I did in Iraq and Afghanistan. The fact of the matter is, there is telemetry data from each and every airplane, each and every missile that was fired. Right, absolute GPS by the millisecond. That data exists someplace. But what we get is Donald Rumsfeld, in this case, telling a bunch of journalists what happened, and then they go back to CNN, and then they make this diagram that makes it all look real. just like I did. Right? Oh, this is actually what happened. Hell no. It's based on his report, and then they invented what happened based on what the press secretary said. Even though the actual telemetry data exists for each and every one of those missiles, but we don't have access to it.
They should have his head on each of the connecting dots so that you know it's his opinion.
Hmm.
And so that's what all of that, a whole series of work that I did is all around that idea.
Do you
That
feel
it's word of mouth. It looks like data. It looks real because it's data and it looks real. It must be real, but it's all based on word of mouth.
do you feel that video games right now, it's always like there's this thing, cancel culture and all that. I'm not going to delve deep into that, but do you feel like games need to be always fun and always gamified and always and pure entertainment, or do you feel like there can be another angle to like more like an education tool that
Absolutely.
attacks more serious topics?
Yes to both.
Yes,
I don't
both.
think games should be just for fun, just for entertainment. Every now and then I like to do a first-person shooter, even though I don't make them. Just go for it. That I was playing Conan Unchained for a while. That was fun. That's a Funcom game. That was fun. And then I also do believe in this kind of serious games. That's what I'm more interested in creating my own self. So my current project is indeed this thing called Truth Detectives. And so that's what I want to do, but it's not necessarily what I want to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really play games that often anymore. I make them. I'm still waiting for the real genre-smashing game that invents a new genre that is totally awesome. I'm still waiting for that because most things are still kind of sort of much better of the same. Of course, mobile gaming that changed things a lot because it opened up the industry.
Yeah.
Also, you play this thing casually, but it still has a lot of the same properties that are more serious games like Far Cry had.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about the pharmaceutical giant Pfizer. Pfizer. Did you make a learning game for them about Zyrtec?
Yeah. So the release of Zyrtec, which I think was an allergy medicine, we made this question. It was basically just a question and answer game.
Yeah.
Nothing too sophisticated. Multiple choice. That then would depending upon the answers, of course, it would diverge into different areas, and it was just basically a guy climbing up a cliff, and the cliff would change, and where he would go would change, and it was written with Criterion renderware, so very, 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 very early game engine essentially.
Wasn't that used mostly for movies and stuff?
Yeah, it was just that. But they had a real-time engine that was at that time the fastest. Cost a fortune. The company paid for it, of course. And then you were just dealing with matrix math. So you didn't even have a thing called a vector. Right? You had a 4x4 homogeneous matrix that you multiplied with another 4x4 homogeneous matrix to get the result you want. And so I learned a lot doing that out of nowhere. And actually, I happen to have this book, Quantum Mechanics in Simple Matrix Form. Yeah, right. But I was actually useful to help me figure out, well, how do you do matrix math? Oh, no, you have it up this way, and then you do this. Okay, that's no big deal. What is it that I'm trying to do here? Yeah, so that was Pfizer. So yeah, okay, I just sold my soul to the company. I sold my soul to the devil, to the pharmaceuticals. For like 3 months.
Yeah.
I needed the money.
It's
Not, and he shall not be judged.
Yeah.
involved with.
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, and it was just an allergy medicine for crying out loud.
It's I was talking to my friend who is studying engineering in one of the colleges here in Iceland, and he was like, "What can you do else rather than only make video games?" And I have you here that a person that have worked for a pharmaceutical company, you help out with PowerPoint plugins, right? With like, what is your message to students that are learning this or studying this degree and they think their only option is making video games? Is there any encouragement?
What I would suggest is learn C# coding.
Yeah.
Scripting in C#, because C# can be applied anywhere. And just as I learned, database programming, that ended up being applicable to making games. And so again, from a technical standpoint, if you're on the artistic end, yeah, you can make video shorts. You can do publicity. For graphic, if you have good graphic design skills, you can go in that direction and use those kind of dumb jobs or whatever, the ones that you don't want, to continue your studies, your self-study. I'm entirely self-studied, entirely. Yeah. That, just and keep your eyes on the prize. The chances are, when you graduate, you're going to be working at the telephone store, the mobile phone store. Chances are, no shame in it. We've all been there, but know that that's temporary, and as long as you keep on focusing, keep your eyes open, take chances, you'll get there.
Keep on learning and keep on practicing C#. You heard it here from John.
Yeah.
Learn scripting and you will get there.
Yeah, you will. Forget about those blueprints. If you do blueprints, all you'll know is blueprints.
I'm only studying that at the moment. Maybe I should move over to C#.
Or C++.
Yeah,
It's easier to go from C# to blueprints than it is to go from blueprints to C#. That's for sure.
I have heard that one before. Could you tell us a little bit about the JSON project? What is that?
That was one of my favorites. This was for National Geographic. The JSON project was essentially a school curriculum about ocean habitat and biology. And so I was contracted by a company in Wisconsin, Kill Limit Games, I remembered, to do the fish flocking, the fish schooling algorithm for the underwater fish. And I just happened to be very fascinated with this algorithm, so people knew that I knew this algorithm very well. It's Craig Reynolds flocking voids. I was very good at optimizing it, and so I could have lots and lots and lots and lots of fish swimming around. So that's all I did for that project, was this fish schooling algorithm. It worked out really nice. Really, really nice project. Felt good about it. I don't think it's online anymore, but it was for quite a long time. Written in the Torque game engine. So Torque was just a little bit pre-Unity in terms of kind of a unified interface, and it was massively multi-user. So Torque was also used on V-Side. So that was a product from Garage Games. It was also used on Tribes 2. That was like its major commercial release, was a game called Tribes 2. And okay, they didn't survive the middleware crash. A lot of companies didn't survive, and Unity and Unreal came to the top.
Yeah.
It's so, move on.
There's one question that you mentioned some of the softwares you have worked with during your time. Would you say it's like, what's the difference, because you have so much experience from like all the way working with Microsoft to now, and you played with Unity and all these softwares. What is the main difference between softwares now and then? And would you say it's easier to make video games and like practice and learn and everything? Because you talked about you were debugging, or like not debugging, you were like contacting the Microsoft over a phone to learn how to code and all that.
That was a special case, right? A special situation. But yeah, it's absolutely easier now to do anything that you want. I wish when I was starting out that I had this kind of software available to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because getting, back in my day, getting a computer to do any kind of hardware graphics acceleration was difficult. Most computers didn't have them, and so I used to walk around with this kind of big lunchbox with my own sort of box stuffer that I would bring to show people, because I knew I couldn't install their software on their computer. They didn't have any kind of graphics card.
Yeah.
And back then it was also, I got a demo system all over the place. So I need to be able to always bring the thing, and I couldn't. You didn't even have a laptop at that time that could run any kind of accelerated graphics. So just that as an example, yes, way easier now. Way easier. And that's the biggest difference. I mean, programming is programming. Logic is logic. Logic doesn't change. It's either true or false.
Fun to see the difference.
It's true or false, and or not. That never changes.
Yeah. Would say it's fun to see the difference between now and then?
Yeah. I mean, I like it now better,
Yeah.
but in a sense, because it also does make my life easier. But I also miss in certain ways miss the challenges that I had back then, where
The hardcore
for me to
challenges.
pull some code off the internet, it wouldn't be right in any way. It was I was trying to implement it in a completely different environment, so I had to translate from Pascal or something to C or C++ or Basic or C++ into Basic and or Perl and whatever, all these languages, and so then you learn. There's no better way to learn how to program than porting some piece of software or some piece of code from one language to another. Because the ideas are all the same. It's just logic. They all have the same idea. They just talk about it differently.
Do you think there will be like a universal coding language anytime soon?
That's an interesting question. I don't have a crystal ball. I guess that if there'd be a universal coding language, it would be some kind of visual scripting that everybody agrees upon, that this symbol means this and that.
Blueprints.
Do you think there will be like a translating tool? Like you could write in any code and it would get it out in a different language?
No. I seriously doubt that, because there are such subtleties between the languages in terms of memory management and allocation and access and referencing that I don't see any AI being able to do that in the near future. Blueprints, yeah, okay, maybe, because that is, you don't have to get into the mussy fussy about integers and storage space and heap and stack and short pointers and long pointers and smart pointers. But again, I'll say I hate visual scripting languages because I'm just lost in there. I'm an old man. Clicking, drag and drop. Oh, I dropped it in the wrong place. Oh, how do I delete that? Whereas coding is just like, why?
Yeah, I love visual scripting. It's so much connecting the two dots and see everything work.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm sure. I've done it too. I've done it, but it's just not my beach, as we say in Portugal. That's not my beach.
Not your cup of tea, like Joshua would say.
Cup of tea, not my cup of tea.
I mean, I have a kind of a derailing question, sort of about you
Okay.
and music. Why do they call you the old punk rocker?
Well, because I was, you know, there was a period of time where I was more or less living on the street, dressing and making my hair all funny. At a time where just dressing weird and making your hair all funny would get you beat up. Not like today, where everybody can be all as freaky as they want. So I was a pioneer of freakiness, and took a few blows for it. But we always went out in a group. Never really be alone. Uh, and so that was early. Not early like as in the Sex Pistols, 77, 78, but 81, 82. Uh, and I hated everything. I think Ronald Reagan was the president then. I had to register for the draft. And just antisocial, anti-society, alienated. And as
Yeah.
punks, we're all just alienated together. We're all alienated, so it's form a alienated club. And to join, you got to look really funny.
I mean, as an old punk rocker, did you travel to Japan for any music stuff?
No, no, never. I never actually traveled for any music stuff except for this kind of experimental music that I do with my wife and with other people. So kind of weird music. Uh, yeah, experimental music. So it's not rock, it's not hip hop, it's not anything. It's experimental.
Oh.
Hmm.
Often means a lot of noise, but not always.
I mean, you
Yeah.
have been to Japan.
Yeah, yeah.
Was
That
that
was
it? What
for
kind of context was that in?
That was for this project called Glassbeat, which was an online multi-user music game. So you would fling these things around. It was a 3D world, but it was static camera, fixed camera. But you had this object that you could sort of spin around. It had all these spikes on it and bells, and when things clashed into each other, they would play sound. And so that was displayed at the Intercommunication Center, ITT. So Japan's biggest telephone company has a
Mm.
museum, and it was shown there. So that was later. That was
Oh,
when I
okay.
had a career. 2000, 1999.
Uh,
Right.
Yeah,
we have had a lot of expeditions around the world,
yeah.
from Whitney Museum of American Arts and Whitney Biennale, the Museum of Contemporary Art. So, John, what's your favorite museum of all?
Well, I could be facetious, and I could say that the museum for the Battle of Vimeiro in Vimeiro, Portugal, about a kilometer from where my farm is. So it's a little museum that is about the Battle of Vimeiro, which was the end of Napoleon's invasion of the peninsula, the end of the Peninsular War,
Hmm.
back to war stuff. So, but I'm being facetious. Um, you know, the question would almost better be, what museum do I hate? Because I love them all. They're all great in their own way. I like the ones that I can get in for free.
Me
That's
too.
my favorite. The one that doesn't cost me anything. I think that's actually really the best answer. Um, I love them all. Can't think of one that is more special than others.
Hmm. Have you worked in with within a cooperation with a museum before, in any sorts?
What
Like,
is
have you like worked? How can I phrase it? Have you like performed in a museum or
Oh,
put your art in a museum or something like that?
yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
That a show in a museum is a show in a museum. It's on display, um, and yeah, performed live in that kind of context is many times as well. That's what it means to be in show business. You got a
Yeah.
show. A museum, being an artist is you're in show business essentially. It's different but the same.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, a bit back here to Norway. Back to Noroff.
Yeah.
Um, In previous episodes with other teachers, we asked them a bit about we've gotten to know about the work environment, and we found out that few of you guys play some board games together.
Yeah.
So we're thinking about like what's the relationship like with other teachers like Diego, Joshua, and the other teachers. Do you enjoy the atmosphere in Noroff, or do you like
Sure.
working away?
Absolutely. We're all different, but then we have our similarities. And indeed, I'm hosting game night tonight.
Oh,
We're going to play Side, really fun game called Side. And me and Joshua and Eric Hammer, we're kind of the sort of the core three who love to play these games, and we even spend a couple Saturdays painting the minifigs. So between the three of us, we absolutely have we're friends, not only colleagues. And then Diego sometimes joins us, and Eric Gelson has occasionally joined. Felipe, when he's around, he often plays. Um, and it's always centered around dinner, right? First we eat, then we play. And so yeah, it's all super cordial between all of us. I mean, I suppose the I don't know. We're all a little different. Alexander is really heavy philosophical, and I'm just a clown. So you got Alexander and you got me, and everybody else is in between, in one way or another. And what more could you want? It's we all respect and admire each other.
Yeah.
We all have our styles, and they are all appropriate to education at Noroff. You need all of it.
Yeah.
You need a clown like me, and you need a serious philosopher like Alexander. You need it.
You mentioned the Scythe, the board game Scythe. That's one
Yeah.
of like my all-time favorite board game. I'm glad to say I'm really good at it. No, I
Okay,
just
maybe you can beat
like
Joshua. Maybe you come over one night and you take on Joshua. Because
yeah,
the questions you asked was like, who's the best? And it's like Joshua.
I will be visiting Norway some point and challenge Joshua to a duel in Scythe. No,
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
but have you ever won against Joshua? Because he
Oh
said
yeah,
like I'm
yeah,
definitely the
yeah. He's the most consistent winner, and I sometimes I would just not necessarily out of luck, but because I had such a crazy plan that he would see it coming. So for me, playing board games, it's really not winning or losing; it's how you
Yeah.
play. So it really is. I have a situation. Okay, here's my situation. I'm going to try something. And I don't care what the other guys are doing, actually. I'm not even going to pay attention to them. If they attack me, they attack me. I'm just going to see if I can implement this thing. And there are just times where, yeah, it implements beautifully. Everything lines up, and nobody saw it coming. So that's how I play.
Do
It's always
you
nice, of course, but it really doesn't matter to me at all.
do you team up, you and Eric Hammer? Do you guys team up against Joshua sometimes?
No, actually. No, we don't. We probably should. But again, that's
Tonight.
kind of like, it's kind of also against the point because, yeah, I think that probably if Eric and I cooperated extensively, we could put down Joshua and then we would squabble over whatever was left, right? And it's like, I don't like that kind of game. I don't even go after him. Sides is not such a combat-oriented game, right? There's just a little bit of element into it, but you're not always fighting, and so I just choose not to fight at all. I'm a lover, not a fighter.
I have a question for you. Do you play video games?
Well, not so much anymore. Well, I was playing Conan Unchained because it was free, and I did download a game. What is it? Download something on my phone just so I have a game to play when I'm flying. I go, oh, geez, I could actually. I'm too uncomfortable to read. I'm too uncomfortable to do anything. But maybe I could play one of these stupid games. And so I haven't even looked at it yet. So yeah, it comes and goes. I don't play consistently. If I hear about something new, or if I need to have a look at a game because a student is referencing it in some way or another, then I'll have a look. But generally, no, I don't really play that much. I think.
No.
Well,
Yeah. So have you? These are more like a fun question things. So
Yeah.
this quite interests me. When I was in class with you, you mentioned or showed us. We were talking about music and what kind of music we listen to. And if I remember correctly, you were in a band, right?
Yes, I'll tell you the story. I know exactly where you're going.
Could you
I
tell
was
us
in
the
a band.
story about that?
I was in a band in college called The Sleep Standing with Chris Ballou and Dale Pizer and Phil Franklin. And so after school, we were still playing around in New York a little bit, but then Chris Ballou decided he wanted to move the band to Boston because he thought it would be a better scene. And I said, hey, Chris, go for it. I'm staying in New York. I got this art career thing. So have fun. You guys go to Boston. And so they went to Boston and formed a band called Egg, and they played around in Boston for a while. And then that band broke up, and Chris Ballou and eventually Dale Pizer and eventually myself were all back in Seattle. And Chris started up a band called the Presidents of the United States of America. And they went on to be big MTV hits, I don't know, mid-'90s maybe, early '90s. They were sort of anti-grunge, really fun band. And many of the songs that we were playing all along the years were also in the repertoire of the Presidents of the United States of America. And it was really great fun to be there right at the beginning with them. Best friends, always backstage, all this kind of stuff, all the way through to when they played at David Letterman in New York City. Because I left Seattle and then was back in New York City, and then here comes Chris with his band. It's like, okay, yeah, backstage at the David Letterman show, cool. So, in a sense, I was never in President of the United States of America, but many of the songs were the same. And Chris and I are friends to this day, and so I just, grew up with the band. And so, but my musical interests are not in the realm anyway, as far as my own playing. So it never any bad feelings, nothing like that. Except, I can say that there were bad feelings between Dale and Chris, because Dale had always just been following Chris around the world, essentially around the country, and then Chris finally, cut off. Friends from high school, and said, "I'm going this way, and you're not coming." And so that's that's water under the bridge at this point. But that's basically the story. And so I think all artists embellish. So I said I'm in a band that I was in a band that eventually became the President of the United States of America. That's what I always say. I think I can go to court with that.
Are you, John? Are you still in a band, or have you moved
Oh, yeah.
to?
Well, now actually not. COVID put sort of an end to my music playing in many ways. I was in 3 bands in Lisbon prior to COVID. We went on summer tours, really fun bands, kind of weird ass blues rock, and then also the experimental projects, mostly with my wife and this trumpeter named Stein and Gell. But COVID really sort of stopped that, and so there were no gigs, and I just kind of then I came here, right, in a sense. I started refocusing my life away from music. So I was also running a music studio called Scratch Built. I think that's also part of your questions. And that also, a music recording studio. So I did rehearsals and recordings for a lot of bands for about 7 years. And I think. And okay, COVID put an end to that. No gigs, nobody needs to rehearse. Music is illegal for the foreseeable future. Music is against the law. And so, I was able to break even, but I was working like hell and not earning a dime, right? And so I just sort of said, hey, here's my friend, Italian friend, Il Piano Campolo. You take it. I'm done. And I can't deal with the water leak. I can't deal with these people anymore. I'm just done. And so so he basically bought a bunch of my gear, and I kept some of it. And that gear is now at my wife's lab at Lusofina, University of Lusofina. So we recently got a space and some money in exchange for me putting a bunch of material, audio equipment there for the students basically to destroy. Open it up, do your worst, do something, but do something. And so here's a space where people don't have to check out something from behind a metal cage and then return it and insure it, and just come and do something. Somebody will be there to watch over what you're doing. So we have sort of regular lab hours, and you just walk in. Walk in. It's a really nice thing that she and I set up. She's now.
Maybe
Yeah,
it's
so that I used to gig a lot with my wife, but now I don't have the time or patience, and so she's gigging with other people in this realm of experimental.
maybe the COVID situation, like of course it's heartbreaking to give away something you want to work for, but
Yeah,
maybe it's the start of a new time, you know?
yeah, absolutely. It absolutely is. So that's why I'm here. It's just like, okay, I want something steady. I can't live this kind of roller coaster life anymore. And yeah, I mean, it just sort of changed everything, and made me say to myself, okay, there's two things I want to do: grow tomatoes and teach. You know? I don't want to run a studio anymore. I want to grow tomatoes and teach, and so I've achieved that.
What kind of artist has influenced you the most?
Well, the one that is the most influential to me was my professor in university. Her name was, she passed away, Jan Gruber. She's a photographer. First woman, second female photographer to have a retrospective at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. So she was big time, but she also taught. And she taught me everything, pretty much, about thinking, about how to use my brain. And so that's the most influential artist. And then I can name some favorites, Picasso, of course, Matisse. I even like Matthew Barney, grudgingly, in terms of contemporary artists. Damien Hirst, I actually also grudgingly like. But my work, I don't do work like them at all, and I'm certainly not on that level in terms of fame. But I appreciate what they do. Yeah, I appreciate anybody who achieves or excels in any field, music or otherwise. So I like how I can listen to Alanis Morissette and Mozart in the space of 20 minutes. It's no different. I kind of like Alanis Morissette. I'm also currently into this band. What is it called? Polyphia. Polyphia. They're kind of like a heavy metal fusion band. So it's jazz fused with heavy metal and modern amplifiers and really finely made guitars. And so they're just noodling like crazy, which means that they're hardly doing anything here. They're just finger tapping all over the neck because the amplification systems are so great now. The preamps are so good now. Low distortion, low feedback that you barely even have to touch the string. But it's great, man. That's amazing musicians. Holy cow. I could never play like that if I lived 150 years. So I've been listening to that too.
Are you the kind of person that goes around like throughout the day and you're like, well, I really want to listen to music right now, and you kind of have that itch throughout the day, and you get home and you're like, put on
I
music.
play all the time, all the time. Unless I'm in front of the computer, actually programming or teaching. Other than that, it's always on. So when I'm not at the computer working, I have a YouTube stream, and every now and then I try to feed it with something else and like certain things and dislike other things to just sort of let the AI build it for me like a radio station. And so I think that's really actually pretty incredible that it does know and does keep track of my musical taste, because then it's always fun to throw in a whammy like, okay, the aria from Lakme, or the Salvaflut, these incredible female or operatic uh, vocalization, and then you see how that, or then throw in some Bill Evans, some jazz, and maybe even like Wu-Tang Clan, and say, how's it handling this? How's it handling these stimuli from all over the place? I can handle it because I'm not an artificial intelligence. I'm a real intelligence, or semi-intelligent, partially intelligent.
Well, I didn't really think about the fact that people dislike videos on YouTube to try to get the algorithm to give them other things. Because I always think like, why do you dislike a video? Like it's not, there's nothing wrong with it, but people are doing it for themselves.
Yeah, you're not dissing them. You're just trying to get it. You're just trying to see the AI, and you can like it again later.
Yeah.
You're not insulting the musician. Well, unless it's a friend of yours. Don't dislike it if you actually know the person. But yeah, I mean, it's a tool. So don't be forced listening to with the same tracks over and over again, because that's what I found. It's like I keep on hearing the same tracks. I like them all, but okay, I'm kind of sick of this one. Just like skip over it, just like and skip over it, and then your whole my mix, as they call it, evolves. It changes, and that's cool, I think.
Yeah. We're kind of running out of questions here. We've got one last question.
Okay, good. I'm exhausted.
What kind of music do you listen to? You mentioned
Well, I
Mozart, you
just
mentioned
everything. I answered that. I listen to everything, including some stuff that you would not call music. So the musician guys.
what's the newest song that you've
It's my
found?
wife's website. Go visit. There's a link to it on mine. Go visit my wife's website. I listen to that stuff too. Experimental noise. And freeform jazz or free jazz. Yeah, this is free jazz. It better be free because I ain't paying for them. Free jazz. That's a cartoon. That's that's funny. Oh yeah, another quote. Why are the young kids so angry these days? It's because their music sucks. So I'm having trouble finding things that the smart kids are listening to. I'm paying attention a little bit to Discord on the music channel, and I found things. So yeah, okay. There was somebody, I can't remember who, but somebody posted a link to some trip hop, chill out, and it's like, oh, I haven't listened to that in quite a while, and so I played that, for 2-3 hours. So there's nothing I don't like. I even like Britney Spears. In small doses, at just the right moment. Madonna is perfect. At just the right moment. There you go. Everything. I listen to everything and anything.
Yeah.
All right.
That's it.
Marcus, do you have any last question? Any last thoughts?
Um, I'm pretty picky about music.
Yeah.
When people recommend something, I'm like,
No.
that's not what I found. But I love music
How about
too.
Joni Mitchell? I recommend Joni Mitchell.
Yeah.
Joni Mitchell. Bass player Jaco Pastorius. Amazing. He's dead, unfortunately. Got beat up by a bouncer in a nightclub in Florida. Brilliant bass player. Widely regarded as being, the all-time greatest. Well, of that era. So late 70s, early 80s. At any rate, picky about music. I give you lots of recommendations. What are you picky about? What's it got to be to pass your test?
It's like the vibe, sometimes I'm like, I like this vibe, and then I find that music or I hear that music, and then sometimes someone recommends something. I'm like, I'm not really there right now, and then I like dismiss the whole thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, back when I was a punk rocker, I dismissed everything. that wasn't punk. And then, even though before that I was listening to a lot of album-oriented rock, Led Zeppelin, things like that. Yes, and so I rejected all that, of course. And then, over time, I started to like it again. So I listened to everything. I still listen to Dinosaur Jr. and Minor Threat every now and then, even the Sex Pistols. But I actually came around to revisiting a lot of music that I rejected and finding things that I liked about it. So yeah, the same will happen to you.
Hopefully, get more music to listen to.
Yeah, then you have a lot more music to listen to. Exactly.
Well,
Right.
Gentlemen,
take
is that
it,
a wrap?
Tristan.
Yeah, I think that's a wrap. Thank you guys for listening or watching on YouTube. Please leave a comment or like or dislike, like just to tell the algorithm what you want to watch or listen to. Please leave a review, and yeah, that's a wrap.